Oh, good. You made it. We don't have long agents, so I'm going to be brief. I need to talk to you about Nerd Bourbon Book Club. It's a book discussion show that happens at least once a month on the Nerd Bourbon network of podcasts. Your mission is to find out what book they're reading and listen in on their discussion about it. And your mission begins immediately. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Nerd Bourbon Book Club, where we will be talking in relative detail about this month's book, Masters of Doom. I'm Seth Sturgill.
And I am the one true king, Todd Sturgill.
So this book, this book club episode is about Masters of Doom, how two guys created an empire and transformed pop culture by David Kushner. Maybe you read it, maybe you haven't. If not, if you want to just listen to two guys talk about this book, that's cool. If you have read it, follow along. Maybe you'll enjoy the discussion. Shit, man. I just finished reading this today. As of this recording, I'm cutting it pretty fucking close to the wire.
Oh, I know. That's why I called you out on that last episode of Nerd Bourbon.
I just haven't found the time to sit and read it. But now that I did, I really enjoyed it. I really like this book a lot. What are your just sort of, because you read it way earlier than I did. You read it actually while I was on vacation.
Yeah, like weeks ago. So
yeah, because that was my whole issue. Like, I was going to read it while I was on vacation, and like I was planning on reading it on the plane. I had like a 2.5 hour plane ride both ways, and it just did not happen at all. It was not possible. But today I just kind of set aside the time. I think I spent about 4 or 5 hours doing laundry, and while I was doing that, I read through the book and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's just, again, like I was telling you after I finished reading, I'm like, hey man, you need to read this shit. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I've been getting recommended this book for this book came out in 2003, and I feel like I've been getting recommended this book literally that entire time. Like it feels like I've been getting recommended that book for like the past decade. Like, from just various people have told me, you're so into video games, you're so like passionate about video games, you need to read Masters of Doom, because it is like moreover than like a sort of just a good story about like two guys. It's also like a really good sort of historical tome, like a good history lesson about that era in video games,
Yeah, it's definitely a good way of putting it. Like,
it's a good like you never realize, I mean I've realized it, but I never, I guess, got a true understanding until reading this of how influential Doom and Quake and Wolfenstein and that, those games were to the games that we play today,
Oh yeah.
This book really drives that home, and you come away with a really clear understanding of like where the people that made it were coming from, their influences. Like it really kind of deep dives into it. And actually, as I was reading it, I was kind of taking notes on like my thoughts. The first thought that I had was like my first kind of negative criticism. I was just like, Kushner he spends so much time talking about the backstories of these like ancillary characters.
Mm-hmm.
But then like I kind of double backed on it. I was like, well, no, because that actually ends up being kind of important.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about these kind of like, it seems like kind of unimportant characters and their seemingly unimportant backstories. But it sort of makes sense. They get into these like other people that basically joined up with them at what was it called? Soft Disk, I think. That kind of startup company that was making like shitty games. These guys that kind of like joined up with them, and they, there's like pages that talk about, entire pages and pages about these characters, and I was just like, okay, well, do these guys really matter, and does their kind of upbringing matter? But it kind of does, because it kind of influenced Doom in a way, especially when you start talking about the two main characters, John Romero and John Carmack. Like, their kind of upbringing is really important, and the first basically 2 or 3 chapters is just about their childhoods, kind of where they're coming from, and then them finally meeting,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the book kind of really thrives, in that first half, as I was telling you. Like, I really feel like the first half is like way better than the second half.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with you on that point, but like I was saying, I think overall it's still just like a solid experience. Like, I feel like anybody that's interested in video games in general should just honestly pick up the book and read it.
It's a little bit appropriate, like when you start talking about like the second half, because it builds up. It starts off with kind of giving you an understanding of who John Romero and who John Carmack are, and then like, you know, their meeting and them sort of like, because they really were kind of a match made in heaven, and then like them meeting and working together and like revolutionizing video games together, and then eventually, you know, John Romero kind of like, I think John Romero actually comes off a little bit worse than he should in this book, like, because he kind of, it's not necessarily untrue, but he kind of comes off as like he became like a rock star and then he just didn't care about anything, you know, type shit. And it really was like and the book touches on this a little bit, because like he essentially gets fired from id, right? Yeah. And then like he forms Ion Storm and he's like focusing on Daikatana and stuff like that. And even I remember like the Daikatana like marketing, like John Romero's gonna make you his bitch, you know. Like Daikatana was like this huge hyped up thing, and like when it finally came out, it was like super disappointing. But like I think what kind of changed for him wasn't even necessarily the rock star persona, which he does have, but like it wasn't necessarily that as much as it was he was focused more on design than technology. Like and the book touches on this a little bit, but like Carmack was more so like he wanted to constantly innovate and constantly push the envelope in terms of tech. And John Romero was more focused on the actual game design. And in fact, I think Ion Storm's motto was "Design is law." So that was sort of the whole ideology behind it, and it didn't really pan out for him. But still, you have to give the dude credit for, like, I mean, he coined deathmatch. You know, I mean that shit spawned from this time, and I don't know. I just kind of wanted to talk about a couple things about what would you say is your favorite part of this book?
Overall, the one part that kind of stuck with me, because I just thought it made me laugh, was it was actually in the second half of the book. It's when he decided to wait for Carmack to come out with this new engine, basically.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to put it into Daikatana.
Right.
And when they actually looked at like the code for it, and he's just like, "Oh shit."
He's like, okay.
It's like, what did he do? What the fuck?
Yeah, because like Carmack is a bona fide fucking genius.
Oh yeah.
Like, and it's, you know, it's funny because he works in video games ish still. I think he works at Oculus, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's like the last thing I've heard of. Like he's like kind of like jumped into the whole VR game.
Yeah, I think he works in Oculus, but I mean the last like big project he worked on, if I'm not mistaken, was Rage. And even to this day, like I booted up Rage on my PC just like a few weeks ago, and it still is kind of a marvel. Like that game came out however many years ago, and it still looks amazing, and probably single-handedly probably still some of the best skyboxes in any game ever. Like it's just gorgeous still, you know, and that's all Carmack, you know, and Carmack is still just a genius programmer. But yeah, I gotta say my favorite part is in the first half of the book when when he's when they're trying to get vertical scrolling working.
Oh, okay.
So like the whole issue is like PCs were kind of underpowered at that time compared to both Apple IIs, which was like the reigning sort of PC, and, you know, the Nintendo home consoles. And, you know, Mario Brothers 3 had just came out, and it's like the best-selling game of all time. I think it sold like 17 million units at that time. And, you know, everybody was desperately trying to get that sort of scrolling effect, that smooth scrolling effect that Mario had working on PC, and it just wasn't possible because the PCs weren't fast enough. And Carmack literally just like stayed up all night one night and just fucking figured it out.
Yeah, and made it possible. Like it's crazy, man.
It's nuts. Like that is the reason that shit exists on PC, is because that dude in one night just pulled an all-nighter and just made it work in Dangerous Dave and copyright infringement.
Honestly, that's one of the craziest things about the book for me, is just reading about all this shit. And it's just like, my God, so much shit wouldn't even be possible if it wasn't for these two guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, they're icons, you know, and I mean they were, that is the definition of a pioneer in the industry. And like it was nuts because it was funny. The intention was they wanted to, because they weren't even interested. They were at the point where they're like, we'll literally just port Super Mario Brothers 3, and Nintendo, you can just pay us to do that, and we'll be happy with that. But like that idea became Commander Keen, you know, Like that idea became Commander Keen, which kind of spearheaded the whole id and even to some extent the Bethesda kind of side of it. Like it's nuts. Like how these two guys almost accidentally created an empire without even realizing it, just on their bootstraps. It's a really good like American story, and it's a good story about friendship and sort of the sort of devolving of that friendship and sort of the
definitely.
Like the fall of the empire that they built. And I mean, it is riding high right now, but it was not like that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like Rage kind of came out and sizzled and popped and died. But like, you know, there was talks for a long time about a Masters of Doom movie. And it's funny reading this. I can totally envision it in my head, like a social network kind of take on it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. We were talking about that like yesterday, and it was like, I'm like, yeah.
It makes such perfect sense. There was talk like years ago about, I don't know, it's probably dead in the water now because like, you know, as I was just saying, like id was kind of a dirty word for a little while there. Like they released Doom 3, you know, some people liked it, some people didn't. And then like after that, it was Rage or whatever, and like, you know, like I like Rage, but the industry didn't take super well to Rage. And then after that, it was just quiet until 2016 Doom, which is amazing, you know, and everybody loves it. Again, they're riding high right now, but it was not like that. I almost feel like now is the perfect time to put out a movie about these guys, you know. Like you're almost not going to have a better time than now to put out this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be worth it. Who would you cast as John Romero and John Carmack?
I don't know.
I already have an answer to this because
shit.
I was thinking of this. Like I said, as I was reading the book, I could not help but envision this as a movie because like I'm a big fan of The Social Network. Like I'm a really big fan of that movie. I like it a lot. With all of its faults, I really like it a lot. I think Masters of Doom is a better story than The Social Network. Like, I actually think Masters of Doom would be a better story than that. Mm-hmm. And if it were handled properly, in the same respect, if it was given the same respect that something like The Social Network had, I really think Masters of Doom could be a huge hit as a movie. And when I think about it, you know, John Carmack, to cast him, like, immediately your mind goes to Jesse Eisenberg.
Okay.
Which, like, you know, would immediately draw even more comparison to The Social Network than it would already would, you know. But I really can't think of anybody more perfect than Jesse Eisenberg to play John Carmack because he's totally. If you even watch interviews with Carmack, he's still even now. I think the dude's in like his late 40s, early 50s, and he's still very kind of like this kind of nerdy, you know, extremely smart, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of like short-spoken guy, just like Jesse, that Jesse Eisenberg character essentially that he generally plays, that is totally John Carmack through and through, and it would be perfect casting. I know you would get the comparisons to The Social Network as a result of it, but like that casting would seriously be perfect. And I think for John Romero, my who I kept envisioning in my mind was James Franco.
Okay.
Like, especially after, like, you see him with the long hair and, like, Pineapple Express and stuff like that. I can totally see James Franco playing that sort of rock star kind of, like, you know. You know, when people think about John Romero, and the book drives this home in a way that I respect, people don't think about John Romero as somebody who's passionate about video games, really, because he did adopt that sort of persona towards the end of it, and he sort of like nobody really understands how much that dude fucking loves video games.
Mm-hmm.
And the book drives that home, especially in the beginning, where like the things that he put on the line to work in video games and how hard he had to work to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, he put his family to the wayside, you know, like in a way that like John Carmack didn't really have to, because his family sort of put him to the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked, and I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but I really liked the part where John Carmack literally was going to like steal an Apple II. Like he was like, I think he and some friends were going to steal an Apple II because they had developed like thermite in their fucking science labs. That's another thing a lot of people don't know about John Carmack. He's a fucking rocket scientist.
Yeah.
Like the dude literally is a rocket scientist. So yeah, he and his friends like built some thermite, and we're going to like steal an apple too, and like almost got away with it. I guess one of their friends was like too fat to fit in the hole that they cut, so they had to unlock the door for him, and it triggered the silent alarm or something. And then they arrest Carmack. You know, they arrest Carmack or whatever, and he's like, I think a kid. I think he's literally like 17 or something at this point. And they arrest him, and they're like, "Would you have done it again if you didn't get caught?" And he was like, "Yeah." he was like, "I'm gonna be honest with you. I probably would have done that again if I didn't get caught." And which is, again, you can just totally picture Jesse Eisenberg delivering that line. You know?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that.
I don't know. That's sort of my thinking is like, this is the perfect time to release a Masters of Doom movie, because this is a really good American story of two guys sort of overcoming the odds, building something great, and watching it fall apart. Mm-hmm. It's that perfect arc, you know, like that perfect arc that you see so much happening naturally over the course of video game history, and just the way that it influenced games now. I mean, it's nuts, and it's nice to see the lifeblood, you know, kind of encapsulated perfectly in this book. And if you love video games, I think this is a really good read. I think this is a good book to read if you're passionate about video games.
Definitely.
I don't know. I don't have a whole lot more to say than that. Do you?
I mean, like, I don't really want to jump full on, like, go like chapter by chapter, but like,
no, I don't want to either.
Exactly. So you kind of hit like the major plot points of it, and that's honestly all that we really needed to do here.
Yeah, I guess another thing that I wanted to just briefly mention before we wrap this up is it's impressive that Kushner's writing in this is impressive, because Kushner, I guess, started as a games journalist, and the book is it's a novel, it's a novelization, it's a novel style book. But he worked on this book for years, and the way he did it was taking interviews with Romero and Carmack and journalistic stuff that he had written about them, and he sort of novelized that.
Yeah.
So just the raw amount of work that you can tell went into this book is admirable. And for somebody to look at their journalistic pieces and are able to take that and over the course of years turn it into a cohesive novel, I think is really impressive. Just as a writer, like, just reading this is really impressive to me, knowing its sort of history. And I don't know, I really, really like it. I think it's really good, and I think it's sort of if you are interested in reading books about video games, this is a really good place to start. So that's really all I have to say about it. It's really good. You should read it if you like it. And I think the movie, you know, make it now. If you're gonna make a Masters of Doom movie, do it now. They're riding high. It is finally on top again with, you know, the new Doom. Like, it's a perfect time to release a Masters of Doom movie. I think people would go with Jesse Eisenberg and James Franco.
I definitely would go see it, honestly.
I would love it. I would love it. Like, I would love to see that. It's such a good story. Like I said, I think it's actually a better story than Social Network. Handled properly, this could be like a really, really interesting movie. Anyway, that's going to do it for us on this episode of Book Club. We will hit you guys on the first episode of October to reveal what October's Book Club book is going to be. So tune in for that. And other than that, we will see you guys next month. Catch you next time. Get fucking dunked on. Bye.
See ya.